I feel like recently it's become apparent that most songs in the mainstream are getting shorter, going from around 4 minutes to like half of that. And this trend is apparent in most genres, be it pop, indie, rap, or rock. However, rather than talk about that, I want to discuss something that happens a lot in most conscious rap songs. A 9-minute plus song. So join me as I go through 4 of my favorite 9-ish minute long rap songs. In Kendrick Lamar's discography, there are a ton of long songs, be it Mortal Man, Fear, or the topic of this section, Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst. This behemoth of a track sits at 12 minutes and 3 seconds and is split into 2 parts, Sing About Me and I'm Dying of Thirst. So let's discuss. In the first half, Kendrick raps from the perspectives of 2 people and himself, those being Keisha's sister and the brother of his friend Dave. This technique of rapping from the perspective of other people was popularized by Nas on the song Seco Story and has been done many times before and after both tracks, not just from the perspective of people, but from concepts as well. Anyways, Kendrick opens the first verse from the perspective of Dave's brother, discussing getting revenge on the people who killed Dave, thanking Kendrick for the love he showed him and the system he was born into. Dave's brother, who from here on out will call DP, talks about the violence that happens around him and how it shapes him and the other kids in impoverished communities. DB then thanks Kendrick for the love he showed from Dave and tells Kendrick to promise to sing about him before being cut off by gunshots, befalling the same fate as his brother. In stark contrast to this hope that Kendrick will bring light to their situation, the second verse is from the perspective of Keisha's sister, the sister to the prostitute from Keisha's song, who has also had to go into prostitution to make ends meet. She touches on Section 80, feeling hurt by Kendrick's portrayal of her and other women going through the same situation, and tells him that she doesn't want him to sing about her, saying that she'll never fade away, as she literally does in the context of her verse. Finally, Kendrick does something he does on a lot of songs, like the unreleased Pray or Fear, switching the retrospective tone onto himself in the current moment, touching on his own feelings of fading away and being forgotten, as well as responding to the previous verses, almost as if he's in dialogue with himself. Then it finally cuts into the heavenly chorus once again before Skid transitions us into the second half. The second half of the song touches on the revenge aspect that was brought up in the first verse. Kendrick and his friends seek to gain revenge on the people that killed Dave, and won't rest until they do. Alongside this, the verse has heavy themes of religion. As most of us know, Kendrick is a Christian and maybe a black Hebrew Israelite, but I don't really want to get into that. Anyways, and often brings in his own worldviews and religion into his music. This second half brings that to the forefront as he discusses their neglect of God's embrace and how they are all dying of thirst, living away from God, away from holy water and such. The verses in the second half take their separation from Christianity and the gang violence hand in hand and paint a picture of youths living in sin and anger, before the skit at the end bridges the whole story together. Kendrick and his friends get baptized by their neighbor, and the prayer they share mirrors that at the start of the album. Kendrick is trying to do better while living in a city like Compton. And that's the whole point of the album in a way, trying to be better in spite of your circumstances, and how your youth shapes the kind of person you are. Let's talk about someone controversial now. Run away from me, baby. Kanye's worldviews are terrible. I'm not going to touch on any of that with the 10-foot pole. You know this, I know this, he's just rage baiting. You get that? Good. After the 2009 VMAs incident, Kanye went into hiatus, taking ideas from Good Ass Job and fleeing to Hawaii to work on his next album, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, which many consider to be his magnum opus. Personally, Late Registration is my favorite. Anyways, in these sessions he flew people out and locked in to deliver this album, since he knew that in this period of time, this next album would be make or break for his career, and thankfully, it was a banger. Now let's hone in on one track in particular, Runaway, featuring Pusha T, sitting at 9 minutes and 8 seconds long. This is a legendary track, as many people have said just hearing that first note gets everyone to turn their heads. This track has a lot of substance, so let's discuss. The track opens with the same E note played 15 times, already building an atmosphere, before the note drops an octave, and this continues as the melody is played until the beat drops. The song then features a sample from a live concert by Rick James where he says, "Let me look at you," which, side note, is the same concert Kendrick gets the sample from the second half of DNA from. Anyways, the sample is played on loop before a James Brown sample, "Ladies and gentlemen," leads us into the track. Also, let me quickly say something I found out while researching. I'm really young, so I wasn't old enough to listen to some of these tracks when they came out. But you know the line where Kanye is talking about his dick not only happened, but he also got it leaked to the public. Research that if you want to see it at your own risk, because that is wild. Anyways, back to this. Throughout the first verse and choruses, Kanye touches on his problems and how his relationships always seem to fail, giving a backhanded apology to the people who was wronged, which is very him. He knows he should, or even could, be changing for the better, but he stays stuck in his ways, his arrogance overpowering his apologies. We then get a brilliant verse from Pusha T, playing the role of the asshole, with a verse that Kanye got him to rewrite into perfection, much like Rick Ross on Devil in a New Dress. This was actually their first time working together, starting out from a conversation about girls' troubles, but nonetheless their chemistry is amazing. Similar to Sing About Me, Pusha sort of raps from the perspective of a new Kanye, a new personality in a sense, less apologetic, more asshole, almost as if he's letting go of the slight maturity he's shown earlier on the track. This verse carries the messaging and themes of both the song and the rest of the album as a whole, being materialistic and unapologetic, even if an apology would be beneficial. Nonetheless, following this verse, we get another iconic verse from Kanye, which somewhat contextualizes the whole song as taking the form of a Greek tragedy, with a noble hero befalling their own pride, even as they know their flaws are taking over. They're dead set in their ways. Then we go back into a pre-chorus and chorus before being greeted by a heavenly outro, taking up over a third of the song's runtime. We can hear Kanye singing or rapping or humming or mumbling over the instrumental, but due to the vocoder effect we can't make out what he's saying, which has many interpretations as to why we can't hear, or what Kanye meant by it, but I think there's several reasons for this outro. I think it reflects Kanye making a half-assed apology, not really focusing on what he's saying, nor does the listener really care about what's being said. And also how the media always twists what he is saying, ready to misinterpret everything he says, which has become a real problem for most things nowadays, with how we consume information. But it really is open to interpretation, so feel free to let me know what you think. Now let's move on to an overhated rapper that I personally love. Jermaine Lamar Cole has become really overhated recently, which makes me sad because he's honestly pretty great. Anyways, following his critical and commercial hit 2014 Forest Hills Drive, Cole was gearing up to release his fourth studio album, which he would do with Interscope Records for the first time, and of course Rock Nation in Dreamville. This honestly has to be my favorite Cole album, and throughout he raps from both the perspective of himself and his now deceased friend James, whose name was of course changed for privacy reasons. Nonetheless, Cole takes us on a journey going through James's life, recounting his struggles, and sometimes coming in as himself, talking about his friend. The concept of the album itself is as a message from James to his daughter, ensuring she has something to remember her father by. So let's touch on the title track and outro to the album, For Your Eyes Only. This track, despite being the shortest one in this video today, I could argue has the most lyrical substance in this video, maybe aside from like Sing About Me. The song has 4 verses and 2 different choruses. The first 3 verses are all from the perspective of James. He's got this feeling, almost premonition, that he's about to lose his life. And if you listen to the whole album, you see the dramatic irony, as we know that James is going to die. He feels like he might die, which leaves him feeling paranoid. Almost as if his life is flashing through in his last moments, he recounts everything from his first arrests to the birth of his daughter, noting how the system has left him broken and unable to change his life. It's a cycle that befalls him and a lot of other young black men in these communities, wanting to change, but felonies hanging over your head, making it hard to make any progress. James makes it clear he wishes his life could have gone different and laments the choices he made, and hopes that he can be around for his daughter, unlike his father who was shot up when he was only a child. James is afraid that the cycle will continue, and that his daughter won't know the kind of man he was, and will only see him as a drug dealer who couldn't even take care of his family. As I mentioned before, the song has 2 separate choruses, one that comes between verses 1 and 2, and 2 and 3, and one that comes between verses 3 and 4. The second chorus almost serves as a transition from James speaking to Cole as we go to his perspective. In the 4th and final verse of the song, Cole remembers James and the last conversation they shared. In a way, we almost get to see the last 3 verses again, but now from Cole's perspective, as James shares the same thoughts he shared in the last verses, but now to him. Cole recounts their conversations as James discusses their life together, being kids in the community, and how life pushed James into something dangerous. James once again mentions his paranoia, telling Cole that he knows the time he's living on is borrowed, and that when he dies, he wants Cole to be able to share his story to his daughter, making sure his spirit lives on in a similar way to Sing About Me. James says that he was happy to be a father, before Cole dives into his own opinions, not just the city, but the country they live in, and how it can change someone and lead them into the wrong direction. He touches on these ideas and themes of racial prejudice and how it affects children, before switching back on the topic of James. He speaks to Nina now, making sure that James's memory lives on in the people he loved. He communicates with her that her daddy was a real one, not because of him being tough, but instead because of the love he had for her, ending the song by telling her that this record is for her eyes only. The song brings the mostly out-of-order story of the album into a concise ending, bookending with a touching tribute to James McMillan Jr. Now let's discuss a song from another overhated rapper. Now to end this video off, let's talk about Logic.
I'm biracial, so bye, Felicia.
Anyways, Under Pressure, the self-titled track and lead single from Logic's first album, sits at 9 minutes and 20 seconds, making it the second longest track in the video today. Also, much like Runaway, the track has a condensed version also available with it, in this case being utilized for the single release. Nonetheless, the track is amazing all around, with the album as well also being critically and commercially well accepted. Once again, just like every song in this video, Under Pressure also features Logic rapping from different perspectives, those being his father and sister, and the track plays out almost as if we're listening and knowing the back and forth voicemails between Logic and the people in his life that he cares about, with us actually getting to hear the sound of a suicide line voicemail tone, a real voicemail sent from Logic's brother Ralph, and a voicemail from Logic's father. The song opens with two verses starting us off with Logic's perspective. We hear about him starting to break into fame, how that's happened and how it impacted his life both negatively and positively. He touches on his feelings on the matter, making it clear that he won't get fazed by any haters, that he's here to stay whether they like it or not. Alongside this, the song as a whole features a sample from the song Easy Does It, which has been used in a lot of tracks, but in all honesty, the way it's done here is probably my favorite utilization of it. Seriously, if you haven't listened to this track, I'm telling you, go listen to it right now, then come back. I mean, Logic himself produced the track, which is amazing. Anyways, as I mentioned before, the verses talk about how Logic feels in his rise to stardom, and this is represented through the theming of calls and ringtones. In particular, this can be seen in the chorus. Following this third chorus, we then get an interlude to the aforementioned suicide hotline before the perspective of the verse switches to Logic's older sister in verse 3. This verse, Logic's older sister discusses how she feels about Logic's rise to fame, what is supposed to be a voicemail she leaves for him. Alongside this, she discusses her own troubles throughout her life and how Logic used to be there for her. She talks about her ex, fearing becoming like her mother, the man that raped her, and all these other problems that are putting a weight on her shoulders. This verse in particular feels like it drew a lot of inspiration from Kendrick, with the song also sharing a sample with Sing About Me, which honestly isn't even a bad thing, because being inspired by fellow artists to create better art is important in the creation process. Anyways, from there we get another switch in perspective, now to Logic's father as he laments his son not talking to him as of late. The two have always had a difficult relationship, which thankfully they have seemed to work out at this point. His father talks about his own struggles with alcoholism and drug addiction, trying to be clean in order to be a better father to Logic than he was before. However, despite trying to be better, near the end he starts asking Logic for money and favors and calling back to the chorus he's cut off. Then we get the aforementioned voicemail from Raph. We find out that Logic missed his brother's birthday, and we get another perspective to some of the information we've already heard. Following this, the fifth and final verse is from the perspective of Logic. Much like Kendrick on Semi-Dot, he's addressing all these voicemails, explaining how his newfound fame has gotten to him and made him more distant from his family. Nonetheless, Logic wants to do better and spend time with his family rather than be in the booth, so he decides to stop being so distant and starts being more present. Finally, the song ends with a voicemail from Logic's dad, responding to the final verse, making it clear that he's starting to do better, before ending the track by saying he's proud of Logic. Rap as a genre often gets overlooked and overhated for almost no particular reason, other than, the skin tone of most rappers. Anyways, rap is honestly probably the most versatile and dense genre, with subgenres being more popular than some actual genres. All in all, these long songs are a great example of why I think rap is amazing. And also, let me know if you want to see a part 2, because this was very fun to make. Subscribe if you like, because I'm really close to getting monetized, and stay comical.